Wire Sponge's stage introduces a couple of concepts rather cruelly. 1. X's base jumping is terribly worthless in X2 because you are never expected to have to use it. 2. Capcom was out of good boss ideas long before it started making remarkably unthreatening sunflowers and onions. Rudimentary pits that weren't made with the intention of presenting a problem suddenly become my biggest worry though, and Wire Sponge's stage is littered with these. The biggest issue and a constant worry is the very random weather system present throughout most of the stage. Anytime it rains, X's already pedantic movement is slowed to somewhere below an inchworm's, and the many large spiked pits become impassable. Even at the offset things are nightmarish though. Traversing those hovering poles in the rain required some very precise timing, especially since it requires you to always be jumping to a pole traveling downwards in the second half, and you have very small windows to do this. At least it's consistent though. All I can say about the elevators is X's nemesis seem to think boring him into giving up is somehow productive expenditure, and X3 has about tenfold the hard-on for this nonsense X2 does, so don't count your blessings quite yet. Getting back to the weather system though, just looking at some of the pits I need to pass, it's obvious it would be impossible in the rain. But without weapons, I can't alter the weather once it's been selected, and rain or sunlight seem to be able to spawn in any of the open areas in any order. I haven't been able to affect it with timing, and X's normal buster does nothing to affect the crystals that normally control weather. To top it off, waiting the weather out does nothing since once it's there to stay until you continue past the area, so when I'm fucked, I'm fucked. How this eventually ended up working the way it did was with my clever little idea to work around this shit heap of a stage, which was... well okay, there was no fucking clever idea actually. I just randomly discovered on one attempt that for whatever God-sent reason, the one specific crystal that I'd need to alter the weather with actually was affected by the X-Buster, even though none of the others seemed to be. Then immediately after that I got exactly the combination of effects I needed and beat the level. And that's my thrilling tale. Beyond that, there's another saving grace you might have noticed which I'm not sure I've mentioned in the past. Every time X jumps off of a downward slope, his forward momentum is greatly increased. Believe me, this saves my ass on several occasions outside of this one. I could keep going on about increasingly overdrawn out details that passed by before I even brought them up, but I guess I have to bite the bullet and at least make passing mention to the boss who's failing miserably to present a threat right now. Wire Sponge is so damn predictable it hurts. The only thing he can do that can justifiably be called quick on the draw is to jump into the air and catch himself on the wall with his vine. Everything else can be dealt with under the virtue of it behaves the same fucking way every time. Also, I might be crazy, but it seems Capcom took a bit of creative license designing this dumb shit, since he looks less like a sponge and more like a mutated squash, which is what I always thought of him as when I was 8, since I was too retarded to know a sponge was anything other than the weird smelling thing under the sink. Real unforgettable legacy being killed off here, people.